You should be aware that every cell in an Excel workbook has got a name. The name is shown in this area here. Whichever cell you've got selected, there is C10. It shows you there the name of the cell in the name box. G2, G2 in the name box. What we're going to look at in this video is how you can rename the cells to be much more useful. For example, a very simple worksheet, number of apples, oranges and pears. If we want to know the total number of fruit, we can do a very simple formula equals C1 plus C2 plus C3. And the answer is 68. And when we click on there to see what constitutes the formula, we can see in the formula bar C1, C2, C3, it's very obvious what we are calculating there. But just imagine if we don't want the total of fruit here, we actually want the total number of fruit over here. For whatever reason, we've got a big worksheet with lots of numbers in it, lots of data in it. We want the total numbers here, and we've got to put in equals C1 plus C2 plus C3. Again, there's our answer, 68. Now that's fine for us creating it, but what happens in 6 months' time when we come back and have a look? Somebody wants to modify this worksheet and they have a look at this worksheet and see this here that just says total numbers C1, C2, C3. What does that mean? It's meaningless to anybody unless they go and really search through to find out what those numbers actually mean. So we're going to look at a way of renaming this to make it much more helpful. First step is to select the cell that you want to name. So I'll select cell C1. And then I'm going to use the Formula tab and then come down to the Defined Names section and then select Define Name. What that does is open up the New Name dialog box, which allows me to define the name that I want this cell to be called. I'm going to call it Apples because that's what the data is. You're trying to create a name that's meaningful. The scope just means where do you want this name to be available to. We're not going to go into that. We're going to leave it nice and simple, make it valid for the whole workbook. You can add comments if you wish, and if you notice down the bottom, it's picked up the cell range. If that's incorrect, then just simply select the cell that you want it to be. So what we're doing here is defining the cell C1 to be called Apples. I then click on OK. You can see now we've got cell C1 selected and it's called Apples, not C1. So let's repeat that process for oranges and pears. Select the cell with the data in it, formulas, defined names, define name. This one's called oranges. And OK. And the same for pears. Select it, define name, pears. And then OK. So now there are two things we can do. Wherever we are in the worksheet, if we want to find that those named cells, we can use the drop-down name box and go directly to oranges. And it jumps me to that cell that's named oranges. Apples, and it jumps to that cell. So it helps navigate the worksheet. Let's have a look at a formula then. Equals. Now instead of using C1, C2, C3, we can actually use those new names. So I can say apples plus oranges plus pears. And there's the answer, 68. Now obviously that then becomes much more useful if we're somewhere else in the worksheet and we can do equals apples plus oranges plus pears there. Oops. Then not only does it make sense to us as we're typing it in, we know what that total means, but also anybody coming to look at this at a later date can see, what on earth is this figure? Oh, it's apples and oranges and pears. It must be the total. So it becomes a lot more useful when you're naming your cells. Now I'm just using a very simple formula there, but these also work in functions. You can use the name cells in functions also. So what else can we do? If we select the Name Manager, again it's on the Formulas tab, Define Names, Name Manager, it brings up a list of all the named areas that are in your worksheet or workbook, and there's the ones that we've created just now: apples, oranges and pears. The reason this is useful is because from here we can delete the named cell. It'll just delete the naming. Obviously the cell, the data will still be there. We're just deleting the naming. So we delete pears. OK, and close. Look what happens to all your formulas. There's errors in your formulas now because that says apples plus oranges and pears, but pears isn't anything. It doesn't know what it is. So it comes up with an error. Just undo that deletion. So that's on Name Manager. You can also redefine things. If that's the wrong cell range, you can go in there and change it to get the names correct. Now I've just done that simply on single cells, but it doesn't have to be. You could have a whole range of cells selected and give that range a name. For example, let's select range A1 to C4 and name this, define name, let's name it fruit, and OK. Now whenever we want to get to the fruit section, that's a named area, we can jump straight to it. I'm just going to delete that formula and use Name Manager to delete those ranges that we've already got set up. And then I'm going to delete this blank column here. I'll put that there on purpose so I could show you how to work that from the bottom up, if you will. But if you've already got your numbers and your data and your labels in the spreadsheet, then you can create things automatically. All we do is select the cells with the data and the labels, and again it's the Formulas tab, Define Names. This time we're going to use Create from Selection because we've got the cells selected. Create from Selection. This just asks us, where are the labels? The labels are in the A column, in the left-hand column. That's why this is ticked. It's picked it up automatically, but just check where are the labels in the left column. OK. What that has done is created apples for us. From the data, it's called apples. From the cell, it's picked up that label in A1. That's called oranges. It's picked up the label from A2. That's called pears. It's picked up the label from A3. So that's naming cells, really a very useful tool.